Hello students, I am Tulika Banerjee. Today I bring you the next learning episode in BSc Forensic Science on an important unit of the paper titled Forensic Psychology, that is techniques of detecting deception, narco-analysis and brain fingerprinting. In this lecture, you will be introduced to the deception detection techniques and we will be covering two techniques, that is narco-analysis and brain fingerprinting. Narco-analysis is a procedure of investigation of mental content of a person done after application of light general anesthetic drugs. This investigative technique is based on the principle that at a point very close to unconsciousness, the subject would be mentally incapable of resistance to questioning and incapable of inventing falsehood that he has used to conceal his guilt. It involves administration of light anesthetic agents or drugs intravenously. On the other hand, brain fingerprinting is an instantaneous psychophysiological valuation of an individual's response to certain stimuli, for example, pictures, words or phrases presented on a computer screen. So, with this in view, let us now know the modules which you will be learning in this chapter. Module number 1, Introduction to Deception Detection Techniques. Module 2, Narco-analysis. Module 3, Medico-legal aspects of narco-analysis. Module 4th is regarding brain fingerprinting. Module 5th is regarding court judgment on deception detection techniques. And Module 6th is regarding conclusion. Now, dear students, we will be starting with the introduction of this lecture on Introduction to Deception Detection Techniques, which is module number 1. Psychology is defined as the scientific study of the human mind and its functions, especially those affecting behavior in a given context. As an individual exhibits purposeful behavior, it becomes socially significant to understand, to predict, and if possible to influence the individual so that the society remains progressive and those residing in it are happy. Today, with the increasing crime rate, various techniques to detect deception are employed, for example, brain fingerprinting, narco-analysis and lie detection or polygraph that has various clinical, scientific, ethical and legal implications. The so-called deception detection techniques, or better termed as DDTs, are beneficial in knowing the information that has been concealed pertaining to the crime. The concealed information that is only known to the perpetrator is sometimes helpful in the process of criminal investigation. The accused is questioned in such a way that the investigators are able to divulge out the concealed facts, and that will finally help or will have a significant role in the collection of evidences. In case wherein the subject remains quiet and does not answer any of the questions put up by the investigating agencies, then to what extent the investigating agencies can compel or pressurize the suspect to disclose the concealed information also plays an important role. Today, the third degree methods have become unacceptable so as to extract information regarding the crime from the subject. Also, it is to be noted that the confessions made to a police officer in the court of law is not valid. The various deception detection techniques available are employed by the investigating agencies. Though investigating agencies are aware of the fact that the information that has been obtained cannot be used as evidence during the trial procedure in court, they have contested that it is safer than third degree methods used by some investigators. Here, the claim is that by using these so-called scientific procedures in fact finding, it will directly help the investigating agencies to gather evidences, and in this manner, the rate of prosecution of the guilty and also the rate of acquittal of innocence will increase. Of late, these techniques are being promoted as more accurate and best to none, without convincing evidence. But in its groundbreaking decision, the Supreme Court of India has clearly indicated that the deception detection techniques or DDTs cannot be carried out without consent. Moving on to our first technique, that is narco-analysis in module number 2. Narco-analysis is a procedure of investigation of the mental content of a person done after application of light general anesthetic drugs. This investigative technique is based on the principle that at a point very close to unconsciousness, the subject would be mentally incapable of resistance to questioning and incapable of inventing falsehood that he has used to conceal his guilt. It involves administration of light anesthetic agents or drugs intravenously. The drugs that are generally employed during the procedure of narco-analysis are scopolamine hydrobromide, sodium seconol, benzodiazepines, and thiopentone sodium or sodium pentothal. The use of thiopentone sodium or sodium pentothal has shown adverse effects on individuals, which include laryngospasm, shivering and delirium that may occur during recovery. It can precipitate acute intermittent porphyria in susceptible individuals. The drugs, when induced intravenously, cause the individual to enter into several phases of anesthesia. When the individual passes into the hypnotic stage or the subconscious state, he or she becomes less inhibited and is more likely to disclose the information which the individual has concealed and which would generally not be revealed when the individual is in the conscious state. The individual or the subject may disclose all his or her fantasies, personal wishes, impulses, instinctual drive, misapprehensions, delusions, conflicts, misinterpretations, etc. The major disadvantage of narco-analysis is that some individuals are able to maintain their capability to mislead even in the hypnotic state, while others can become extremely suggestible to questioning. This is especially worrying since investigators may frame questions in a manner that may prompt incriminatory responses. Also, in case the individual undergoing narco-analysis takes or abuses intoxicants or drugs, then a degree of cross-tolerance could occur. Therefore, in an attempt for analysis, wrong dose may be given to subject and put the subject in coma or may even cause death. The drugs used do not guarantee that the subject will speak only the truth. The statements given or spoken by the subject in the state of hypnosis are not voluntary because the person undergoing the test is not in a clear state of mind, and that is why these haven't been admitted by the court of law as evidence. Narco-analysis without consent raises certain issues such as a physical assault on the body by giving injections and also multiple painful stimuli, for example, hitting, slapping, pushing, shaking the body and forth so as to wake the person from a state of hypnotic trance and to have answers from him regarding the questions posed and mental assault by injecting drugs and also an unrestricted access to the utmost privacy, the privacy of his or her own mind. In the era of evidence-based medicine, it does not have any significant role in the treatment of any psychiatric conditions. Now dear students, in our module 3rd, we will be studying about the medico-legal aspects of narco-analysis. The procedure of narco-analysis and subsequent interrogation has raised serious ethical issues for involvement of medical professionals in the procedure. Many think that narco-analysis is a form of torture. Involvement of physicians in such procedure is nothing but abetting the torture and using the medical knowledge for inflicting torture. Therefore, the procedure of narco-analysis suffers from problem of torture. In addition to violating the laws related to torture, narco-analysis also violates the dignity of a person. Code of Medical Ethics prescribed by the Medical Council of India clearly mentions that the physician shall not aid or abet torture, nor shall he or she be a party to either infliction of mental or physical trauma. It is said that doing narco-analysis violates the established principles of Article 20, subsection 3 of the Constitution of India. On the other hand, the Bombay High Court of late ruled that subjecting sex of the alleged in multi-crore rupee fake stamp paper case to certain physical tests involving minimal bodily harm such as polygraph, narco-analysis and brain mapping did not violate their constitutional rights, specifically the protection against self-incrimination guaranteed by Article 20, subsection 3 of Constitution of India. The judicial sanction for these methods rests on the argument that protection of Article 20, subsection 3 does not apply at the investigative stage. It is also stated that narco-analysis violates section 161, subsection 2 of CrPC, which says that no person accused of any offence shall be compelled to be a witness against himself. Now dear students, as I have already told you in the initial of this lecture that in this lecture we will be taking up two techniques of deception detection, that is narco-analysis and brain fingerprinting. So moving on with our module number 4th, which is regarding brain fingerprinting. Brain fingerprinting, given by Dr. Lawrence A. Farwell, is an instantaneous psychophysiological valuation of an individual's response to certain stimuli, for example, pictures, words or phrases presented on a computer screen. As a forensic method, the test assesses the subject's knowledge of a crime scene or of the instrumentalities or fruits of a crime. And it can also be used to assess knowledge of the particulars of an alibi scene or sequence of events. In the homeland security field, it can be used to detect knowledge of specific training or inside information. Brain fingerprinting uses electroencephalography, that is EEG, to measure event-related potentials known as the P300, that is electrical events beginning 300 milliseconds after exposure to a stimulus, that are characteristic of the information processing that accompanies recognition of stimuli in comparison to a remembered context. Dr. Farwell has drawn out the analysis of this event-related potential further in time to take account of the additional information that has not been analyzed hitherto, and he refers to this extension of the P300 wave as MER, that is memory and encoding related multifaceted electroencephalographic response. Just as a personal computer emits a characteristic sound whenever its central processing unit is transferring information from or to the hard drive, the human brain emits a characteristic P300 and MER wave, that is the electrical response whenever the subject responds to a stimulus by updating his memory context to take account of the stimulus. The P300 or murmur response is not evoked when the stimulus is irrelevant to the subject's memory context. Accordingly, if the person is a witness to or perpetrator of the crime, his response to stimuli that betray accurate details of the crime, that are probes, will evoke a P300 or murmur response. Other items known to the person, regardless of whether he was present at the crime, that are targets, also evoke the response and permit the tester to establish a baseline from which to compare the person's responses to the probes. Other stimuli that have no relevance either to the crime or to anything in the subject's memory, and they are called as irrelevance, establish a baseline for a flat response, that is no P300 wave or no murmur evoked. The signals obtained from the subject's response to multiple presentations of approximately 12 each of probes and targets and twice as many irrelevance are averaged using analytical tools that are standard in the field of EEG psychophysiology. In this way, an overall result is obtained demonstrating whether the probes have evoked a P300 or murmur recognition response or a flat non-recognition response. A similar test can be administered to prove the subject's alibi defense. However, in the case of an alibi, all that can usually be determined is whether the alibi story has validity as the subject's remembered experience. It is not usually possible to determine whether the exact timing of the alibi experience places the subject away from the crime scene at the time of the crime. Brain fingerprinting using a standard P300 analysis typically yields an information present or information absent result with a statistical confidence in excess of 95 V0 and usually higher than 99 V0. And Dr. Farwell is able to increase the confidence factor when utilizing the additional signal information contained in the MER. The availability of fresh, salient and detailed probes is essential to the efficacy of the test. Indeed, it is anticipated that once the reliability of the science underlying brain fingerprinting is established, the principal line of attack for parties opposing the use of a brain fingerprinting test result in a trial will be to challenge the evidentiary value of the specific probes that have been employed. Note that this is a challenge not of the scientific process of brain fingerprinting testing, but of the investigation into the crime, a process that precedes the scientific brain fingerprinting testing and that discovers and specifies the crime related information embodied in the probes. Dr. Farwell acknowledges that brain fingerprinting cannot be successfully applied in cases where the subject has been exposed to all the known details of the crime scene, fruits and instrumentalities in circumstances unrelated to committing the crime. In such a case, no viable probes would be available, since probes by definition involve information that the suspect denies knowing by virtue of non-participation in the crime. Without such probes, a brain fingerprinting test would not be conducted. The investigative phase of preparing the brain fingerprinting test, which discovers the salient features of the crime, that are used as probe stimuli depends on the skull and judgment of the investigator and is not a scientific process. In the process of brain fingerprinting, the scientific phase starts only when, during the investigation, the scientific probes have been identified. The science of brain fingerprinting testing determines whether the subject responded to a probe, providing an objective result, information present or information absent. The result does not depend on the subjective judgment of the scientist conducting the test. The test result is then presented to the trier of fact to assist in the determination of guilt and innocent. Now, we will be discussing in our 5th module the court's judgment on deception detection techniques, or the DDTs. In conclusion, DDT has faced a number of criticisms and it is still unclear to what degree lie detectors and brain mapping can be used to reveal concealed knowledge in applied real-world settings. The Supreme Court's judgment on involuntary DDTs is that it has no place in the judicial process. On the contrary, it will disrupt proceedings, cause delays and lead to numerous complications which will result in no greater degree of certainty in the process than that which already exists. Contemporary DDT needs to undergo rigorous research in normative and pathological populations. Premature application of these technologies outside research settings should be resisted. The vulnerability of the techniques to counter measures also needs to be explored. It is also important to know the sensitivity and specificity of these tests. There should be standard operating guidelines for conducting DDT. The recent Supreme Court judgment on DDT is admirable from the scientific, human rights, ethical, legal and constitutional perspectives. Now, dear students, let us conclude this lecture. Today, with the increasing crime rate, various techniques to detect deception are employed. For example, brain fingerprinting, narco-analysis, lie detection or polygraph that has various clinical, scientific, ethical and legal implications. The so-called deception detection techniques, or better termed as DDTs, are beneficial in knowing the information that has been concealed pertaining to the crime. Significant use has been made of instruments that are psychophysiologically based, and the evaluations from the responses are done using core psychological constructs across the clinical and the cognitive domains. Lie detection is based on sophisticated measures of biofeedback and continuous recording of minor variations on complex computer programs, provides a whole range of instruments. The basic principle is to provide psychologically arousing cues intermittently while monitoring the changes using pulse, temperature, respiration, skin conductivity or any other physiological measure. In this process, an individual trying to mislead by providing untrue information can be identified. Brain fingerprinting is a forensic science technique that uses electroencephalographic response, or the EEG response, to determine whether a specific information is stored in a subject's brain by measuring electrical brainwave responses to words, phrases or pictures that are presented on a computer screen. A cognitive psychologist assists in interpreting the EEG variations and the interpretation of the relevant material. In narco-analysis, the subject's imagination is neutralized by making him semi-conscious. In this state, person cannot lie to any question. Experts inject the subject with intravenous hypnotic medications like sodium pentothal or sodium amytal. This process too cannot be conclusively without the active role of a forensic psychologist. In conclusion, DDT has faced a number of criticisms and it is still unclear to what degree lie detectors and brain mapping can be used to reveal concealed knowledge in applied real world settings. The Supreme Court judgment on involuntary DDTs is that it has no place in the judicial process. Dear students, this is the end of our conclusion module, in which we have recapitulated our chapter about techniques of detecting deception, that is narco-analysis and brain fingerprinting. I hope you all have enjoyed this lecture. I hope you all have understood the underlying concepts of this chapter. Do keep in mind what we discussed today. I'll be back with one more lecture in this series. If you want to learn more and enhance your knowledge, you may log on to our website www.cec.nic.in for MCQ, quizzes, LWARs, etc. Make sure you revise the modules frequently so that you master the topic well and take up the exercises. Thank you for your time today. I'll see you in the next lecture. Keep learning and goodbye.